So, we've talked just very recently about how there are indeed many different theories about what leveling up could actually mean. But of course, as I said before in that previous video, it doesn't matter if you have all these theories about how you can level up because there is one pretty much central theme to it all. Unless you've got the cash to actually back up these theories as well, or ideas, or how indeed leveling up works, none of them are going to work at all, flat out. And here in the North, especially, we have really thought about how what leveling up actually means, what different communities, what different towns, what different even cities need in the North need for them to actually achieve the so-called leveling up ideas and agenda. And in particular, Manchester. And of course, what happened to Manchester is, again, it got a lot of money, but it didn't really level up. What it more was a more gentrification project. And the thing is, that didn't really work for the city. And even as a result, different ideas were floated around about how this money should really be used. And again, all the ideas have come, and you've seen Andy Burnham come in as, again, the obviously mayor for Manchester, really start to push more of those alternative ideas. So there are ideas out there, but the problem is the central government just doesn't seem to be getting the memo, and we've seen why. They've got a top aide of Rishi Sunak saying that it's just impossible to level up because these places aren't London. And of course, the Tories are so ideologically fixed to the idea of there can only be this London model, and surely if we just roll out this London model to the rest of these, towns and cities, surely that will work somehow as well. But again, not so. But again, more different voices need to be involved in this leveling up idea. And if the Tories seriously want to actually stand any sort of chance of actually holding on to these northern red wall seats that they won at the last general election, then they've actually got to actually start to listen to some of these local ideas. And it has become very, very clear that they aren't interested. Even these red wall Tories are, again, ideologically fixed to this idea of just throw money at it, just replicate what they did in London, somehow it'll all be fine. Anyway, we'll get into this warning from Manchester, because I think it's something very worth bearing in mind when we are talking about levelling up and what the wrong kind of levelling up would be for the North. So before we do get into that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel that way. So on with this. This comes from The Guardian with the title of "Heed the Warning from Manchester. The levelling up strategy doesn't work." It's hard to imagine a Tory government 5 years ago to promise to end the geographical inequality that is such a striking feature of the UK. In Philip Hammond's 2016 Northern Powerhouse strategy, the word inequality didn't even appear once. But there it was in the government's very own levelling up paper, released just last week, mentioned no less than 35 times. Buried in the 300 pages, we find an argument that makes the market forces cannot simply be left to their own devices, and that an admission that the wrenching structural changes of the Margaret Thatcher years caused large lasting economic damages to significant parts of the UK. But old habits die hard. The paper even acknowledges the implicity and the occasional explicitly that the UK's growth model is broken, failing to spread prosperity even among people and places. Yet it fails to pursue this reason to its own logical conclusion, and is thus left trying to solve these problems using the exact same thinking that created them in the first place. Apparently, levelling up is about growing the economic pie everywhere and for everyone, not re-slicing it. Or, in other words, about having our pie and eating it too. The prescription for areas that are, quote, lagging behind London and the South East is depressingly familiar. It's the same prescription that has shaped cities such as Manchester, where I live, over the past decade. In brief, the government will attract new inward investment by private capital in leading edge, high tech sectors and upgraded infrastructure. This will create growth and boost productivity, generating plenty of high skilled jobs and triggering a vicious cycle of augmentation. I think that's how you say it. Um, there is just one problem with this. It doesn't boost living standards everywhere and for everyone. It does work for the exact same reason that the soaring GDP in London hasn't benefited the rest of the country or even most Londoners. It doesn't work because great wealth in the hands of the few does not trickle down. High tech sectors such as life sciences and advanced materials have helped drive gentrification in Manchester city centre, while outlying towns such as Bolton and Wigan continue to be hollowed out. Meanwhile, neither jobs created in these sectors nor the shiny new flats have popped up in and around them are even accessible to the people in the deprived inner city areas such as Moss Side. To its credit, the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, of the GCMA, has recognised the problem and is creating an independent inequalities commission to try and tackle it. The Commission recommended that the GCMA does refocus its economic strategy on achieving good lives for all, not just growth and productivity. But despite announcing the dizzying array of new missions, and central government just doesn't seem to have got the memo. The Levelling Up White Paper ponders why measures of quality of life are often lowest in otherwise well-performing areas of the UK, such as London, but doesn't pause to ask why on earth it can possibly mean for an area to be well-performing. If it does, even if it does, not about better lives for its people who call it home. The answer, of course, is that well-performing simply means that someone somewhere is making a lot of money. In London, it is largely driven by the oversized financial sector and an overheated property market, both of which have shown to have very adverse effects on the wider economy. The idea that it is possible or even desirable for every part of the country to be leveled up to the status of London is indeed pie in the sky. But the very phrase levelling up has been based precisely on this fallacy. It soothingly reassures the Conservative donors that their wealth and power will not be threatened by this agenda. Instead, we will just simply see it just raises everyone else to the same dizzying heights. And in reality, we can't all be billionaires. This leaves the government with very little to say about unpaid workers in the everyday economy sectors, such as retail, hospitality, and care. This is perhaps not surprising, since most of these things required to improve these workers' incomes are complete anathema to Tories. Securing workplace rights, properly funding childcare and social care, and even tackling the extractive ownership models, which stuck billions out of the system every year. It is much easier to repeat the tired platitudes about the higher productivity being a surefire route to higher wages, a claim that the New Economics Foundation has debunked just last week. These workers are not failing to prosper because they are not productive enough. The problem is they are not powerful enough. At the other end of the scale, the notion that we can all be economic winners conveniently ignores the fact that some of the economy's biggest winners are gaining at the direct expense of somebody else. They are, as the geographer Brett Christophers pointed out, the renters. Like landlords, they extract rents by controlling valuable assets, be that homes, essential infrastructure, or natural resources like oil and gas. They are not outstandingly wealthy because they are outstandingly productive, but because the value of their assets keeps climbing, continuing to rise the living costs for the rest of us. London is indeed the Death Star of this model of capitalism, which is etched into the skyline of Canary Wharf skyscrapers and Kensington luxury flats. It has been propped up throughout the pandemic by its measures such as quantitative easing on the stamp duty holidays. Once again, the white paper seems more apt to try and replicate this model than to actually challenge it. We are promised the transformational developments of housing, shops, and businesses in 20 towns and cities, but nothing is said about who will actually own these developments or who will benefit. If the government was serious about doing things differently, it might have looked to Preston. We've talked about this before, whose much celebrated community wealth building model has sparked by the collapse of just such developments. Instead, it simply promises to repatriate the government spending to UK firms, reducing the community wealth building to a sort of performative nationalism. It might have even looked inspiring to elements in London itself, which even the proposed community-led redevelopment of the Latin Village in the Seven Sisters north of London, recently endorsed by the council after a major developer pulled out, caused for fresh thinking on how to build beautiful new neighborhoods that have empowered people rather than excluding them. If leveling up is to mean anything, it has to be at the start of a national debate about who does the UK economy actually work for and how it can be rewired to spread the prosperity more fairly. Without this, we will all be leveled up out to the profit margins just for a select few. Exactly what we've been talking about for years. Whenever we've talked about leveling up on here, this has to be community led and led by the people on the ground. But the problem is, you need not only the powers to be able to do that, and most councils and the greater combined mayoral authorities that we see, like again the South Yorkshire mayoralship and the other 4 mayoralships that have now been created, do not have those powers to be able to do that. And of course, at the end of the day, they also need the money to be able to do this as well. And as I've said before, the Preston model, again, if you want to know more about the Preston model, go buy a book. Again, I never have it on hand when I keep on mentioning it. It always pops up out of nowhere. I have to remember to have it on hand. Paint Your Town Red. I keep on banging on about this book continuously. But if you want to know more about the Preston model, we don't have time to cover it now, but go buy that book. It is fantastic. It is the local guide through many of local Labour councillors are now again attempting to follow in their local mayoral elections. So look up, get that book, look up your local Labour councillor and see if they are following those plans and vote for them. Our new potential, should I say at this moment, Mayor of South Yorkshire is following that plan. He wants to create a community-owned bus network and travel centre, which would absolutely be fantastic for this region. But, you know, he needs obviously to be voted in. So if you are living in South Yorkshire and May and local elections, vote for him. Like I say, he's an open socialist. He's not shy about saying it. But it is definitely something that we need to do and push for. And as I said before, the ideas about levelling up, they're all out there. The government just isn't listening to them and is not prepared to really fund these things. And as it said at the very bottom, if the government was generally serious about doing things differently, the ideas are already out there. The Preston model is already out there. It's been proven to work. So why isn't the government funding these things? Because they're very Labour things, which again, Labour really needs to build on and push for more, but also the very socialist things as well. And of course, the Tories can't have that. So, of course, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.